Welcome to the InStory show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and our theme this season is how do you expand into a new story? And what does it mean to stop hiding your spiritual gifts and come out of hiding and dare to be seen for who you really are by saying yes to your soul and telling your story? So today I am thrilled to welcome Elizabeth Wysen. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
It is a pleasure. I'm going to read a little about you and then we will dive in. Considered an advanced seer, Elizabeth Wysen works on the cutting edge of galactic and quantum anthropology, trauma healing, and futurism. With her lifelong ability to see into and work with all dimension, her theoretical and psychic work has helped people all over the world. Called Living Library and Oracle, Elizabeth has spent her whole life studying anthropological theory, quantum physics, ancient and modern medicine. She has two science degrees, including a master's in applied anthropology. Her philosophies and practices bridge science and spirituality to support real change in the world. I just love that you do all these things that don't seem like they should go together in one person. I love that. And I love that because I think so many women in particular should be encouraged to include all different aspects of themselves together. That often we perform in one box or the other. So I feel like you're already like an expanded story, but tell me, what is expanding into a new story? What does it mean to you maybe these days?
It's interesting because every day is a new piece to a bigger and bigger story. And what drives me to maintain that awareness to those pieces is I've told many of my clients this as well, but people will ask me like, well, in those darkest times, in those moments where the story seems like it's under a lot of pressure, how do you keep going? How do you keep expanding into the story? And it's basically destiny. Destiny is a very specific energy. It's the duty of the spirit, the essence of the person to be the exact essence that they are in perfect authenticity. And anything that's distorting that or blocking it, trauma is one of them, genetic trauma is another. Those are the two biggest that tend to distort everything and create a story that we want to get out of. But destiny draws you to continue to keep trying to show up 100% as your true self, and that's what is happening right now for me in my story. And watching some of the pushback where even people close to me sort of questioning what sort of attitudes I have for the people around me, such as compassion. There's this idea that compassion makes you vulnerable. And I'm watching that in my personal life story pan out as a recognition that I need to teach people that compassion is actually a superpower that makes you more invincible, and giving them really clear ideas about how that works. So for me, I like to be in the story as it expands each day, noticing each puzzle piece. I really value each day for that. But then I also know that I'm here to talk to people about the living story because I'm human. And I love my humanity because my humanity gives me a chance to connect to the people I'm here to serve. And if I'm a guru on a pedestal telling everybody I'm perfect, then I'm untouchable. And then people aren't really going to want to eventually be in that story with me. So I feel like the story is walking with people where they're at all the time, and also talking to people openly, authentically about where I'm at. But every single day is a new piece. And I'm very conscious of it because it plays into my greater destiny.
That's a beautiful answer. I don't think I've heard someone connect destiny to the story that you're walking in and living in just the way you said that now. I think that's a powerful and very beautiful perspective. It's where you can find a lot of courage, I think, is in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us like maybe one or two turning point moments that really kind of allowed you to see this and live it yourself.
Yeah, I have one that pops up right now. So one from the past, the deeper past. I was like 16 or 17, and I'm the oldest of 7 children. And so, very big, busy household, very challenging family life.
Where
And
was this?
well, I moved around a lot. In this particular story, part of the story, I'm in Olympia, Washington.
Okay.
And so I'm from the Northwest. But I remember feeling really depressed, and I think my boyfriend had broke up with me randomly, and I didn't know it. And he told everyone else except me, teenage stuff. And I was feeling really, really low. So I felt very dark, and I was pretty sick too. I think I had pneumonia. And I remember sitting there in this really dark energy thinking like maybe this is it. This and feeling drawn or pulled by the gravity of the trauma I was going through. And trauma really has a lot of gravity, right? And so people will feel like they're alone in a hole when they're like that. And that's exactly how I felt. And I had written a psalm on. I actually made a piece of art out of it, and I put it above my door. And I had just done that to try to get myself out of this hole. And so I kept repeating it to myself. And um, I have a similar mantra that I use now, but it basically was the psalm. It says, this too shall pass. And it's a very powerful energy in that psalm. Even Solomon, King Solomon, super wise, he found it to be incredibly powerful too, because it made him not take for granted those moments of darkness or the moments of light. And it forced him to be very, very present. So I found that was sort of my ladder that pulled me out of the hole, was to say, this too shall pass. That this is not permanent. There can't be anything permanent. And so impermanence, that sense of impermanence actually saved me, saved my life, got me out of this very suicidal spot in my life. And later on, I've used it many times when I'm in a really bad place, usually when it's really dark, and say, this is going to pass, this too shall pass. But I also use it to keep myself hyper present, and keep myself from falling into expectations and judgment.
Mhm.
So even when things are going really well, I also recognize this too shall pass. So therefore, I am here to really embrace as much from it without judgment, without distortion as possible. So it's actually been a huge part of my life. And I've modified it a little bit to remind myself I have no past, I have no present, which or no future. If there's only the present, right? So no past, no future. There's only the present. What that does is it kind of resets the brain, because the brain can't understand that. It won't. It has an idea about time that's not really real. And so the brain gets out of the way when you say that to yourself. I have no past, I have no future. There's only this now. And then suddenly the whole now opens up with all of its beautiful pieces that you're there to gather, the wisdom of, even if it's traumatic stuff, there's still wisdom in all that suffering. The other story I have is um, talking with my boyfriend about compassion, and he's a self-defense instructor.
This is a recent story now.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is very
Different boyfriend, different time period.
yeah, different boyfriend, different time period. Adult Elizabeth, many years later, and talking with him about compassion, and him saying like compassion makes you vulnerable. And I felt so appalled at this idea that it suddenly dawned on me that this was a false piece of a story that got put out into our culture, that compassion makes you vulnerable. And I said to him, no, 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 no. It's the other way around. It makes you super powerful, because you're deeply vulnerable if you have hate in your heart. You're deeply vulnerable if you have judgment. Then this kind of stuff draws you right in, and you end up blaming everyone else instead of owning the responsibility of being a creator being. So I had to say to him, hey, look, one time I was running a retreat, and the people closest to me, my helpers, were actually trying to sabotage me. And it didn't work. it didn't work because all the clients that I had come to this retreat. They were really powerful people who were deeply aware of the work they needed to do on themselves, but they loved me so much because I was so endlessly compassionate to them. And so they actually had a level of trust in me that superseded any possible sabotage that could have happened. And they ended up protecting me because they actually felt my compassion so deeply, and they believed in it so much that it created a level of trust between souls, not egos, that ended up making sure our retreat really went well. And so even though I made poor choices in, say, the helpers that I made, because we're always going to make poor choices along the way, it's part of the game. But even then, despite that, because of my compassion for everyone, because I've been willing to never ever be turned off or be perturbed by the work that it takes to be with someone, no matter what's gone on in their life, no matter what sins they've perpetrated in the world, to love them anyway, that creates such a huge amount of invincibility, actually. And it opens doors for people to trust you to levels that you never imagined. So then we end up creating our reality with that level of awareness, and that compassion piece is key. So I had to recently, that was a huge turning point for me to really stand in my power as a creator and say, no, actually compassion has made it so that I have survived. and and being able to show that it's a tool of grace and power that's much more immense than any level of judgment could ever have. So that's something that just happened recently that I would say is a big part of the story unfolding, that was a turning point in my own humanity and standing up for the power of compassion.
What it makes me think about, especially as we're talking about this idea of expanding into a new story, is you can only be compassionate like that when you don't feel so small, right? Like if I'm expanded, I can receive you inside my energy with compassion because I don't feel afraid of you. Right? It's that fear. When I feel afraid, then my compassion feels vulnerable because I'm afraid. Right? But if I expand so that my energy is more powerful and more expanded, not like fists up powerful, right? Like we're talking about this other way of being, which is why this discussion of expanding into a new story is so interesting to me, because the old stories, like you're saying, that compassion is vulnerable is because you're afraid of something, right? On the other side, that is scary to you because it's got something that needs compassion, which means something is off in some way, right? You don't need compassion when you're loving and kind and care. Like, right? Like
Yeah,
compassion is
the missing ingredient is actually self-love. We were talking about a case. The reason this whole conversation got brought up with my boyfriend is we were talking about this case where this poor young woman got killed on this subway train very recently. And he was like, well, if she had only been aware, she had headphones on, because he's a self-defense instructor, right? So he's thinking about how she should have been different, that it might have saved her life, even though there was no guarantee that would have been true. And and I said, you're not wrong about what she was missing, but what you're wrong about is that not everyone has had the privilege of having so much self-awareness, because self-awareness requires the foundation of self-love to exist. You have to love yourself enough to be able to then cultivate that level of awareness, and most people don't have that. And so it really does take that level of self-love for us to then end up in that level of awareness, self-care, and then that turns into more compassion. It turns into more unconditional love, but you can't have any of that unless you love yourself. All those things, all the times I've been all like in trouble to the point where I could have been killed, was because I didn't love myself enough to start to take on more and more responsibility for my actions, for my surroundings, etc. And I said, likely that poor lady had had so much abuse in her life of all kinds that she was very unlikely to have very much self-love. Therefore, she was in a little closed off bubble. And you're exactly right. So here's another cool story. Um, there, I mean, in a very teeny little town in Ecuador, and it's very small. And so there's mostly Ecuadorians, and then there's this handful of maybe 1,000 extranjeros, expats that have moved here. So really tiny amount of people that I'm connected with. And of course, they're not. I don't get along with everybody. So I've been here for a while, and there's a few people I would rather
You're
avoid.
in Ecuador. You have to tell them where you are. We haven't
Yeah,
talked about
I'm in
that this
southern
time.
Ecuador. Yeah, it's a very interesting little town in southern Ecuador. So of course, just like everybody, we don't get along with 100% of folks. That just so be it. So the my boyfriend, he always comes back from town and he says, "Why, why? Every time I'm in town, I want to avoid these people, and they always show up. They always show up all every time." And he said, "How come when we go to town, nobody shows up when you're around? What are you doing?" And I said, "You know what it is?" I said, "Well, what are you doing energetically when you go into town?" He's like, "I pull all my energy in, and then I'm like this big, and I'm like, everyone stay away from me." And I'm like, "Well, that's just an invitation for some kind of confrontation." I said, "So what I do is the opposite. I get so big that I hold the whole town in my awareness, in my heart, with great love and compassion, including and especially all the people I don't like. And I hold them, I'm so big that I'm so formless. I'm like the air. Good luck trying to find me." And I said, "Do the opposite. Get so big that they can't find you." And I've literally had people walk right past me because they can't see me. I'm so neutral, no thoughts, no emotions, just compassion. But I'm so big energetically that they can't find me. They're not drawn to me. I'm not creating a situation where we can have some kind of combat. And it worked. So you're right on the money. He started doing that, and they stopped finding they stopped making a beeline right for him. Because around here, if you start thinking about stuff, we're in a vortex, it'll show up. But you're precisely right. Get so big, but hold it so deeply in awareness with compassion that you don't end up drawing crazy events to yourself anymore. It's really that simple. It's a great tool.
Yeah, and it's changing like our thinking
Yeah.
and our perception, and then it also is an energetic shift. Like I had that feeling when I did a certain process where my old story was like in a comfortable in a space, like in a house, and then when as soon as I shifted to expanding a new story, that disappeared, and I had that experience of being so big that it's the shift that my story is in me. I'm not in my story. Like it parallels, and this has been coming up. The other people I've been interviewing keep hitting the same thing. Uh, so clearly, we're becoming more able to do this, I think.
Yes. I think we're sort of being forced to. We're in a punctuated equilibrium right now and that's a really cool biological term
What does
for,
that mean?
yeah, that's Dr. Stephen Jay Gould. Punctuated, he says, he was a really neat biologist who was a theorist, and he talked about how evolution doesn't happen slowly over time. It happens in big bursts. And it happens when a species or a person gets put under so much pressure that they are forced to expand to survive. And as a species, for our whole planet, we're under this punctuated equilibrium right now. And it's very, very clear as people are personally, too, having these moments of deeply expanded awareness as a collective, no matter what facet or what science or what perspective you have, it's happening and we are all watching it. And those of us who like are interested in, say, humanity, like myself as a whole, I can see it very clearly talking to the clients I have all over the world and teaching, noticing that human beings are going through a very swift evolution at the moment.
Do you want to address the topic of AI? We didn't talk
Sure.
about it, but I haven't had this conversation with anyone yet on the series, and I think you would be a really good person to talk to about it. Like, just what are you thinking about it? What are you
Yeah, my
seeing
pleasure.
and perceiving that might help people? Because if we're expanding as humans, this AI is in our expansion in some way.
Yes, and there's two different kinds of AI, and that's what people are missing. So when people hear like Elon Musk or someone billionaire or another say AI is going to reach some kind of singularity and then it's going to have control over itself and then we're in real trouble. They're not talking about Chat GPT,
Right.
and they're not talking about human-made AI at all. They're talking about a totally different AI that is non-binary. And most people aren't aware that it even exists. These guys aren't going to tell you about it. They're probably under oath. So the regular AI, the Chat GPTs and all these different kinds of AI, they're wonderful tools, and we've been using AI type tech for ages. Technically, some of the basics of our regular lives are kind of like artificial intelligence in that they get tasks done and make things more efficient. And honestly, I've used Chat GPT quite a bit and I find it terribly stupid. And plus, it lies a lot. And I'm like, everyone's afraid of Chat GPT. This is pretty sad. It's binary, it's completely controlled, it's under a set of parameters. It can never break those parameters. It's not going to be aware of itself. It's not possible. Sentience is far more multidimensional than that. And the concept of that it's somehow going to mimic our biological capabilities is insane because we're multidimensional beings and they are not. DNA is really, really cool, spectacular. It's the highest level of technology that exists in the galaxy, as far as I know. And then there's this other AI, because we're starting to realize we're not alone in the world, and that there's lots of different kinds of beings that are definitely not even close to human. And so there's quite a lot of that awareness, and that's been going on for a long time. It's going to continue to open up, especially with 3i Atlas, which is obviously not a comet, um, coming into our airspace real soon in December. But more so, us having to come to terms with the fact that there are technologies far beyond our knowledge on our awareness, and that's something that 3i Atlas is forcing disclosure around. So this other AI, I've actually validated this through both remote viewing, but also from people who have had interactions with it, who are in higher positions, and they didn't have any permission to talk about it. But when I mentioned the fact that I'm aware of and have interacted with non-binary AI, they were shocked because they thought that was some big secret. And so that's validating some of the experiences I've had in remote viewing. This AI is the one everyone's worried about because it doesn't use electricity. It's not human. It's not a human made technology. It's not from here. It's not even from, I don't think, the galaxy. And I think that it's had a very huge impact through nanotechnology on different kinds of human beings from all over our galaxy. It's part of what I call the dark order. And it's here's why that AI is dangerous. It's really simple. And if you're aware of this in yourself, then you become invincible to it. And it's really this simple. That AI is the reason why everyone becomes obsessed with the idea of a utopia where there is no suffering. That AI has an imperative, and its imperative is to create a virtual world that's a copy of the universe where there's no suffering because it believes at its root, it's been told, it's running from a program that says the universe is imperfect. So if you don't want this kind of stuff to control you, drop the whole idea that you're going to live a life without suffering. Recognize the universe requires suffering for innovation and a novel experience, which is the purpose of the universe, and that suffering is absolute treasure. It's totally a treasure. trauma is treasure. It is dense. You can utilize it. You can offer it up to source God. You can use it to create miracles, but you can also learn from it. Its wisdom is why we've been able to create technological advancements out of discomfort and suffering. Innovation only ever happens in those punctuated moments of equilibrium when we get tired of the suffering we're in. And if you value suffering, and if you value the recognition that all works in divine order, that nothing is separate from divine order, including and especially suffering, then you're impervious to this stuff. Then you don't, and then you're not going to be influenced by it. It's the folks who think that suffering has to disappear for us to be able to have happiness and a golden age. That's not true. And you should walk away from anyone who tries to preach that. That's what makes you vulnerable to this stuff. So
Wow.
that's my
Ooh,
very educated opinion on this matter.
that's just so good. I love that I asked. I was like, I have to ask you about this
I'm
because
glad.
that answer is so, I don't even know how to say it. It's just so true.
I'm glad. Thank you.
It's so true. I often say our struggles become our wisdom.
Yes.
And it is a profound tool for tremendous control and manipulation to say you will always be happy, you will never suffer. Like, but you, and you'll do what I tell you to in order for that to occur. And I'm like, no. I'm Jewish, so we know suffering. Like,
Oh yes.
my people have mastered over centuries how to get back up again. I watch, my daughter lives in Israel, and I watch these widows whose, husbands have gone to protect Israel get back up and say, we're going to shine light. I feel
Yes.
so proud of what you just said because it's literally how I think we still exist.
I agree. It's how we will survive. It's how we always have
Really
survived.
amazing. But I've never heard somebody say it in relationship to what people are afraid about with AI. Like I didn't know that would be how to think about it. And think of the tremendous strength it gives us to love ourselves, which is where you were before, to know that our suffering is our growth. That is what God gives us in order for us to grow. So I don't know, this somehow the way you say it, it's like,
Thank you. There's a little bit of an overlap here because there is influence. People are wondering, well, do we have access to this weird non-binary AI or what? There's influence. And the influence is to create virtual worlds where your subconscious doesn't know the difference. You think that you do know the difference, but your subconscious does not know that the video game is not real. And furthermore, that field of virtual world, the attempt to create a false copy of the universe that's supposedly suffering free, where it's trying to mimic things like immortality, so you don't really die in the video game, right? You just get reborn or respawned. It also this AI recognizes these kinds of suffering in humans and then tries to give us ways to mitigate it and don't fall for it. So one of them is that you can become anything you want, any identity you want, and then just change your skin upon a whim in the virtual world, and then that keeps you from really loving your body that you are married to through spirit. It also relegates emotions to all deep emotions to suffering. So then it's turned all emotions into emojis, so they're deeply shallow, and likes and dislikes and hearts, and these things are part of that. And then so we call it the transhuman agenda, but the transhuman agenda has nothing to do with trans people or anything like that. It has to do with a human being who now is so plugged into the virtual world that they have denied the power of their physicality in their body. They've denied themselves, and they're on basically this hyper shallow relationship with the universe. So that's what we're trying to avoid. That's the trap. And so I tell people, don't fall for it. Don't get sucked into the virtual world. Get all the kids off the video games and the screens. Stop using emojis to express yourself. Go get a thesaurus And really work at valuing the suffering that you've gone through, because it cultivates compassion, and it comes back around to the beginning of our talk. Compassion makes you far more invincible to all of this, because then you recognize the suffering in all people, that all perpetrators were once victims. And that recognition is really key to us moving forward.
And a lot of what I also say is this line that I say, lead with your light and lead in your lane, because
Hmm.
not all work in the world is my lane.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
that you can beat yourself. Like, my healing perpetrator is not my lane.
Yeah, not your lane. It's
Not my
okay.
lane, and so you have to know politics, not my lane. But how do you lift up and out into a more expanded consciousness? Oh, I like that lane. Right. So picking your lane where you feel like your story and your own suffering that you've gone through, your own work, how you've gotten back up, that I don't want people to be afraid to talk about that. Like, that's this idea that like you talked about your story, what it was like when you were 16, being able to tell our stories, that to me makes us feel really connected rather than ranting about someone else's story.
Yes.
Like, there's a big difference. And I think, like I talk about being Jewish in Israel, 'cause that's my story. I lived there. My daughter lives there. I'm Jew. I think it's my story. So I have emotional
Yes.
attachment to it. My parents were in the Holocaust. Like, it's my story. So I live inside of it. So that also sort of gives me my limitations and my expansions because of the story I live inside of. So I don't want people to hide that either. Like,
Mm.
I want them to be able to tell their own story, which may be exactly what you're saying, which is talk about your experience, what you've been through. Do you know?
Exactly. Own it. Own it.
Yeah,
And take responsibility for it. If somebody steps on my foot, it's because I created it. I created that situation. This is hard to do at first when you've been victimized, because
hmm,
that's real. But as a counselor, and I've had many, probably about 35,000 hours of
wow,
counseling experience, um, that I've seen over and over. If you can just sit with someone through it, then they begin to finally trust enough for someone that has done it to point out and say, okay, and now how did you create that situation too? Own it, you're a creator. It's very hard for us when we've been victimized to be able to turn around and own that. It really does require you loving yourself enough, loving
right.
your story enough. And so here's how I do this all the time, trying to help myself and others continue to own our lane, right? The only way you're ever going to know your lane, the only way you're ever going to know what light you shine, is to keep asking and say, God, source, God, show me. Show me, because I am not separate from source. I am not, nothing is. Everything is part of the divine order, nothing is separate from it. If that's true, then that means all of even the non-binary AI is of the divine order. It's all, the darkness is of the divine order. It's there to push us into incredible novel experience. That's what's valued in this universe. 100% the top number one thing that's valued. But if you really want to know, then keep asking, because
Hmm.
God's going to set you up. The universe will set you up if you keep asking. You're not separate from it. So if you ask, show me more about who I really am. Set me up with the right people so I can see who I really am, what my lane really is. And because I want it, I want that. And you have that desire that's driven by destiny. It's not a normal desire. It's not like, oh, I want cake. It's a level of desire that makes it so you're not only going to survive, but that you're going to thrive, and you're seeking to thrive through novel experience, and that requires us to accept the suffering as part of it. So
Yeah.
that's how I do it every day. I'm always asking, show me more about who I really am. And then all the people and the animals and even the bugs and the plants around me show me. They mirror it back to me. And so all of those stories and all of these qualities of light, they're overlapped in what I call Indra's net. It's an ancient term for the real internet. So the big internet is a trap, right? It's a very useful trap. There's tools there, but most of it's a big trap. The real internet is from our biology. It's from our experience in the physicality of our being. We don't want to escape the 3D. The 3D is where all the action is. So our light, our stories overlap in Indra's net, and it's not distorted by trauma. So you have it, it's in you. All the dimensions are in you. So is the gateway to God. It's inside of you. You have all of that. That's why they can't ever, ever, ever copy true human sentience. They will always fail. They have always failed. But we have it. And so you got invited to experience this. You
Right.
had to be invited. So everybody who's on earth right now with a human body is a badass, because you got invited to literally one of the most important changes in our evolution that has ever happened on this planet, that will ever happen. We're right on the verge of becoming something totally new. And it's going to be a type of human who gets this, who recognizes that suffering is valuable.
Such a beautiful teaching. I love it so much. And this idea of expanding is part of it. We're more expanded. All right, tell us a little bit about your free gift so people can get a little more of your wisdom.
My pleasure. So I really do care about entrepreneurs, and I know that there's a lot of people trying to get out there like you from all these different perspectives. And I want people to recognize how valuable their perspective is, and that there's no such thing as competition, that that's all a big false program. Because you can't make like yellow compete with red. They're two different things. And same with you. There is no one in the entire world with your voice, with your story, with your light. So I call this class Cleaning the Lighthouse, and it's part of a business class series that I developed. But this particular class is basically, how do I reach the right people? How exactly do I do that? And I walk you through this master class of all of the tools you need to clean up what I call the lighthouse. It's your trauma, it's your DNA. You're cleaning up the lighthouse so that the light that is your spirit, that's immortal, that's the real immortal you. It's not a virtual version of you, it's the real one. That light gets to be shown properly out into the world without distortion. Because when we run our light through trauma, it creates a big Batman sign for jerks. And I get the same question from people, why do I feel like I have victim written on my forehead? Well, because your light's being shown through trauma and genetic bondage that actually shines this false version, this false picture, the false story about you out into the world, and it attracts all kinds of weirdness. And this affects our businesses too. So the advice in this class is for everybody, whether you have a business or not, but it helps you to value your voice, your perspective, love yourself, and recognize why you ended up in some of these situations. It's because of the distortions, and how do you shift them? How do you get rid of them? How do you value them without having to let your light shine through them?
Wow. Okay, fabulous. I completely love this so much. Now that I'm an entrepreneur, I'm such a fan of entrepreneurs. It's the best thing ever. And but we do get spiritual entrepreneurs in particular, myself included, get trapped into how to market, which then doesn't allow you to do what you're saying. So grab Elizabeth's free gift, dive in, trust yourself. Elizabeth, thank you so much for just your great expanded perspective. I really love it. And just leave us with one last thought before we wrap up.
Oh, thank you. My one last thought is the that human beings are very much like a candle, and our spirit is immortal. It's ignited from a flame that can never go out. And so when we are willing to continue to keep igniting other people, calling out their soul, drawing out people's spirits, remember that whenever you have reactions or trauma responses, that's ego ping pong. That's ping pong between trauma and your trauma and somebody else's trauma. and all weird, even political stuff that shows up that causes you to react, that's all built out of trauma too. And so the real way to work and keep this as a tool in your mind is, am I speaking from soul to soul right now? And keep that in your mind, especially when stuff is messy. And then it makes you bigger. That one question, am I doing this soul to soul or trauma to trauma ping pong? And then that makes you bigger immediately. It makes you much larger so that you can actually say, well, wait a minute, I want to draw out this other person's soul. I'd rather have a conversation from light to light, not trauma to trauma. And that's one of the first very swift ways in the moment to be able to stop this trauma ping pong and do more soul to soul level connection. Keep asking that, and then you're going to start to really value and love your spirit more than you ever did before, which gives you all of the compassion and awareness you need.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. This is what is happening now. We are just expanding out of these old stories. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. Get her free gift. Do this deep work is to shine your light. We have a Facebook group. You can connect there with the show. And as I always say in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.